Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. For me, it's good evening. I am from New York, but I am very excited to host this very first conversation and the first iteration of the conversation series with Zeushi or Zeus in English. So perhaps so just to go over what you would expect today, we would have about hour and a half conversation, inclusive of with Zeus, on a specific theme that you might have seen already on the announcement. But before we actually get to the substance of it, let me introduce our participants and also what this conversation series is. So Zeushi, or it's also a Japanese version of the Mr. Zeus. It's Zeushi, is the universal source entity, and you get to meet him in about half an hour. But he's been reaching out to us and to what we call the light workers or the enlightened souls, so to speak, through this monthly conversation series that's been taking place in Japanese since actually 2018. Zeushi provides a theme for each session in advance, and the participating light workers think through and discuss the theme together. And once the common threads are identified through the discussion among the participants, Youka will trans-channel Zeushi, and he will guide us further to an answer through dialogue with him. And the reason we've been doing this conversation series is that the source entity, he doesn't want to just dictate us, right? He wants a joint creation with us. So rather than one-way communication of his messages, he wants to have let's find solutions together approach. And each theme from Zeushi at the time reflects the intent of the universe. It also contains information for the humankind at that particular time in point. So let us explore it together. So that's really the background of the conversation series with Zeushi. And we will get to what the theme for today's discussion would be in a second, but let me actually turn to our wonderful participants on the screen, and so that we get to meet each other, get to know each other, and think together. So let me first ask perhaps Catalina, maybe you can say a few words about yourself and how do you actually got to know Zeushi and Yuka and Miko?
Aloha, I am Catalina on the east side of the big island of Hawaii. I intersected paths with Mikiko in my hula class where we learned about indigenous culture and spirituality and how to really connect to the Aina or the land here in Hawaii. And so I was fortunate enough to participate in the Harmony Stone activation ceremony with them, but it also intersected with dreams that I had from 12 years prior to some of the things that they're doing and talking about now.
Fantastic. We'll actually sort of get to the Harmony Stone in Hawaii with the pictures in a second, but let me also then ask Golden to also say a few words about your path to us. I think you're muted, Golden.
Aloha. I'm also on the big island of Hawaii and was blessed to be able to share with the activation of the Harmony Stone, and have worked with the hub here, which was a part of, we were able to host the guests. And so I got to get to know Yuka and Mikiko personally. And also we had a wonderful session where the community got to share and meet Zeushi. And it was so special, and I feel very this work is just very important for the whole world, and something I've been trying to help bring here in Hawaii is people coming together to learn about sacred knowledge and learning, and our kind of like global family. So I feel like this is such a part of all of that. So thank you for inviting me.
That's so beautiful. Thank you. Maybe then Joshua next.
Aloha, everyone. We are Joshua and Youka.
Aloha.
We live in Laupahoehoe on the east side of Hawaii Island as well. And we got involved with Asuka Kotan project through meeting Miko. Yuka met Miko on Mount Shasta. Yeah, one of the mountains. Mauna Kea. During the TMT protection protest activation. So the universe brought us together, and as we got to know Miko and Kazu and the whole Asuka Kotan family, back then it wasn't known to be Asuka Kotan, but we knew that there was some momentum and great energy behind the movement, and we just helped out, and it just continued growing and growing through our community, and then continued to grow after the activation on May 15th in our own lives. We really put us in touch with our soul family here on the island and beyond, we felt. So very grateful to be here and part of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. I mean, there's a lot going on in Hawaii, right? I mean, from so many different perspectives. Is Palm joining us? Sure. If not, you know what? I mean, I think it warrants a bit of the introduction on what Hawaii Project was and Asuka Kotan Project is. So maybe, ナフィさん、多分ね、写真を今出してもらって、で、ミッコさんかユカさんにちょっとハワイの話を日本語で言うのでしてもらって通訳します。
はい。Aloha, everyone. I'm Miko. I used to live in Hawaii until the end of May last year. So that is, we did 5月15日に、何のセレモニーこれは。宇宙の源ゼウスから、地球に降ろされた、みんなでアースファミリーとして地球に祈りを捧げる、祈りのセレモニーが去年の5月15日にハワイ島ノースコハラで、ありました。
So just a few words about the project in Hawaii that, all the participants mentioned. So what you saw in the photo was the Harmony Stone that was built on the big island of Hawaii. And really the purpose of it, well, it was instruction from Zeushi, of course, the universal instruction, to bring those of us with a shared vision, we call it Earth Family, together and pray for the Earth together.
そこにたくさんの、ハワイの地元の方々やずっとその祈りをされてこられたネイティブハワイアンの方、ネイティブインディアンの方、そして人種や、国を超えた方々が、日本から来られた、ゆかちゃんを中心とした1000の祈りが込められた石たちが集められて、その日本からの、来たエネルギーとこのハワイでそれを受け入れて世界が一つとなって地球にお祈りをした、そういった日になりました。
And of course, what's so special about Hawaii is that the native culture, right? So there have been the tradition of the prayers and then the sort of the ancient the wisdom and the sort of cultural heritage to really sort of live in harmony with the earth. So it was, in a way, it was a sort of the meeting of two energies. The Harmony Stone and those of us from Japan traveling to Hawaii and discovering and meeting with the player communities in Hawaii and the traditional healers and leaders, and sort of together we could then sort of pray for for the earth, for our origin, and be able to release the past karma.
はい。で、このお祭りが終わってからも、私たちはこれから世界に8本の塔、合計9本の祈りの塔を世界各地で建てていくわけですが、このハワイの時に出会った仲間たちと今日は、宇宙の源ゼウシをお迎えして、宇宙会議ということで、ゼウシと共に私たちが、会話しながら、これからの地球での、なんていうんですかね。はい、ことを話していくという流れでございます。
Yes, so the Harmony Stone and the ceremony was built, and the ceremony was conducted in Hawaii on the 15th of May last year. But of course, it doesn't stop there. And now we have a new mission to build 8 more towers, so 9 in total across the world. And really, it's no kidding. It's really across the globe. So the project continues, and today again we have a wonderful guests who are involved in the project in Hawaii. But as we continue and march on and embark on the new path, we would continue a dialogue with Zeushi and think together with all of you on the screen and also on this call. So if you have any comments, questions, please put on chat. I forgot to say that at the beginning, but let's do this together. So that's really sort of the quick sort of recap of how we got here and where we are trying to go from here, to be able to think together and create find solutions together and create the new world together. And that is now the introduction to the theme for today's discussion that came from Zeushi. Nafi-san, 今日のテーマを出してもらってもいいかな? So now we're kind of switching gear from the intro to the meat or the content, the heart of the discussion today. So Zeushi gave us a new theme to ponder and to discuss together, and you will see that on the screen. And it's very, very exciting, actually. So let me just read it out. Reaffirming the transformation of our life patterns. The world you've been waiting for is set to begin. The past world driven by the materialism, the past world that only profits a selected few, the past world built on repeated routine and forced coordination. Have you not been frustrated, disappointed, and bored? Have you not been waiting for an opportunity to change it? The time for change has come. It is now. You're blessed to receive these messages from us, the universe. As in the forthcoming world, those who are connected to us in the universe will lead the way. The game of musical chairs is over. Now I have a question for you, you who will change the world with us, the universe. When I instructed Noah to build the ark, I asked him to do something at the end of the process. What do you think it was? So that's the theme for our discussion today. But as I mentioned at the beginning, the Japanese participants had this discussion last week with Zeushi. So perhaps let me ask Youka to share what they thought of this question. じゃあ、Youkaさん、前回日本語バージョンではどんな会話になったかをシェアしてもらえますか？
はい。前回は、日本の人たちから来たコメントがどちらかというと自分たちよりも周りの人を気にしてる人が多くて、すごいいろんなコメントが来たんだけど、 誰を助けるかとか、どれだけの人を自分たちの箱舟に呼べるかとか、今その箱舟を作るために危険が迫ってるよっていうことを知らせるためにはどうすればいいかっていうことが多かったので、ゼウシの答えが、箱舟に、助ける人は本人が望んできた人だけを助けてくださいっていう答えが一つゼウシから伝えられました。
はい。So when the Japanese participant discussed this question, their first sort of thoughts were more about how to save others, how to communicate, this change that's coming, and how to let people know how to make sure that they understand and how to save others. So that was more like sort of, service towards others was the first thought that came to them. And in response, Zeus's message to them was, well, you can only save those who are willing to be saved. You can only save those who are willing to receive this message. はい。
でそのメッセージはなぜかというと、メッセージは全員に下ろしてるからだと言って、ゼウシは。要はそれを受け取ってる人たちの中でも、受け取る人もいれば、受け取ってすぐに行動する人もいる。いろんなレイヤーがある中で、やっぱり全員にこのために今のこの時期にこういうことが起こるかもしれないから、こういうことをしなさいっていうメッセージを下ろしてて、みんながいろんな形で受け取ると。だからその中でノアはすぐに動いた人として表現されていて、だからそこでやっぱりメッセージが下ろされるのは直前のことが多いと。だから今その行動をしないと間に合わないっていうタイミングでこうしなさいというメッセージが下ろされるから、だからこそみんなが今の状況で誰がどれだけ行動できてるかっていうのを確認できないので、助けたいっていう人はやっぱり自分から来る人だけしか受け入れることができないっていうことを理解しておくことが今すごく大事だということを話して。
はい。So, right, this message, right, that the message that the great change is coming, that message is given to everyone equally. It's there. But what's different, what's not equal is some people would perceive it, some people would perceive it clearly, some people would perceive it and act on it, right? So it's our response that's different. And usually the message that's that the change is coming, we don't have a long wait. It comes like right in your face. When you get it, you have to act upon it immediately. If you are going to be, if you're going to benefit from the message. So Noah represents the person who acts on it, not only who receives, but actually, take an action on it. And based on that I think that's why Zeushi was basically sort of, emphasizing that you can only work with people who act and act on it immediately, rather than just, not receive it or ignore it or not take action.
ですか。そして、最後にゼウシが2つその箱舟を作った人たちがやらないといけないことが2つあるって言って、それが、責任と義務としてその人間たちには持たされている。で、責任は箱舟を作った人たちは次の新しい世界へ移行するからこそ、新しい世界を作っていく、創造していく責任があると。そしてそれを未来につないでいくっていう責任。そして、義務は古い時代に置いていったものに対して祈るっていうことをするのが新しい世界へ行った人間の義務だっていうことを言っていて、だからこそ今 あなたたちは今こうメッセージを受け取って自分ができることをやって、で手をつなげる人とだけ手をつないで次のとこに行きましょうっていうことを言ってました。はい。
And at the same time, those who are willing to be saved, those who are willing to take an action, those who are willing to sort of, respond to the message, they also have a responsibility and obligation. It's a responsibility to create the new world, to sow the seeds, to establish a new framework. And they also have an obligation to pray for the past, mourn for the loss, for those who did not act on it and who did not make the cut for the change. So that was, in a nutshell, the gist of the conversation that they had with Zeushi last week in Japanese. I have to say that's a lot to take in. I'm sort of like trying to digest it, but perhaps maybe I can ask, Katarina, Golden, Joshua, and Yuka, what was your first reaction when you read the theme? Questions from Zeushi today.
Hello, if I may jump in here. I can't say what my first impression was because I read it and kind of put it in the back burner. But in contemplating it and meditating on it, and I even read what it the story. I had to reread the story of Noah in the Bible, which many people take as being literal or whatever. But when I think about what God is telling us is that this flood, he's referring to a flood, but what this flood is a rising in consciousness. When you think of this story of Noah, he's gathering his soul family and into this ark, and the ark can only be so big in literal terms, but an ark, as far as we're concerned, is really us connecting with our hearts and creating through this space, tapping into our true selves and creating through that, because that's what's going to create the new earth. And through this and all the different connections through the other relations we make, the others that we inspire, becomes our ark. The family is the ark, when I really meditate on it. And not just the blood family, but the soul family, those who we feel most comfortable to be authentic and within our creative space becomes our ark, because we are empowered by each other. And that's what really lifts us above the chaos of whatever it may be. So that creativity, creating the new earth, is creating our vision individually and being true to that and connecting with each other through that. And that's the dream of the new earth, which we all see in our own versions, and just taking the steps towards that is what I really feel strongly about. Do you have anything to add?
No, that's great. No, thank you so much, Joshua. And I think that there's a beautiful connection to the Earth family concept, right? And everything that you've done and talked about with this group. And I also really like the idea of like the flood is the massive change of consciousness. I mean, both of human, but also of the Earth. No. In a way, I mean, there's a lot going on, not on the psyche, but also in relation to the earth and how the earth is responding to the ascension and to the reality, and that is that's outdated and yet to and the new reality that's yet to begin. Katarina and Golden, any thoughts? I mean, this is a huge topic, so let's just ease into it and get started.
Well, I think that in terms of us being the people who are coming forward, there's that quote, they say, if not you, who? And we say, if not me, then we, right? And so this idea that these arcs that we're creating within ourselves and to one another are also coming around and fitting together and somehow creating a circle, creating an oasis. And so I think, that's one of the things that we're being tasked to do, is help to facilitate connections and the creativity and the leadership of all of the people that want to take ownership of this new collective world, where we're all part of the decisions that are being made and all of our talents are being utilized for the greater good. And so we don't need to focus on things like television, because we are the television at that point, right? We're just really living the life inside of our senses, instead of through watching it through a device or something like that. And so when I saw that question posed to us, I kind of laughed, because I knew who was going to be on this show together, and also who's watching this show. Anybody who's watching the show is being magnetized together at this movement. It's because we have sort of in effect been our little own oases, and now that we have these arcs to each other, we're being asked to connect with the resources that we've collected, so that we can grow this movement larger, so that it becomes a reality for all of our children and us in it.
Golden, any thoughts, comments, or even questions?
That question made me right away when I saw it. It made me think of how, for Noah, in a way, the ark was just the beginning. The real task came after it was built, and it was like, now gather, right? Bring the animals, bring the people, and then I don't know. It's just that sense of how, as we're gathering, there's that abundance in it. And I was also reminded of, and what you were just saying about the oasis. So I always remembered as a kid, one part of the story I loved was that the way Noah knew there was land again, the dove came back with a sprig of an olive leaf, right? So that's why the symbol of the peace dove. That's so it just made me think of that oasis that we're building, and how creating a space for peace to flourish and new life.
I think that there are a few sort of common themes that the
excited to hear more of where it goes today, to learn more.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm actually dying to hear if Zeushi says something different to us. If the language is different, and our ways of thinking are therefore a little different. I mean, at least the way that we articulate things may be different. And I think there are a couple common themes: the family and oasis, safe place for those of us who who receive and really recognize the meaning of the message. The change, the consciousness change, right? And the sense of responsibility, therefore, not only the consciousness of what it is now and where we need to go from here, but also what then therefore needs to happen after after the flood is over. What's the responsibility that's left for those who survived, those who are willing to act, and who are willing to be saved? I think those are two common themes that the three of you said. I'm also, let me see. I think we have about 46 people also participating. If you have comments, thoughts, questions, please put them on chat and we'll try to pick them up. But let me also just take a pause here and then maybe sort of convey to Youka what's coming out of this conversation so far. なんか多分日本の会話と違ってなんか面白かったなと思ったのは、ジョシュアはね、なんか洪水とはなんかこう意識の変化を表しているのかも。あと箱舟とは家族のことか。カタリナもなんかね、オアシスを考えたって言って、あとゴールデンはね、ノアの最後にノアに伝えられた神の言葉として、やっぱり次どうするのっていうのをやっぱり考えたっていう。なんか、面白いですね。家族とオアシスとその意識の変化と次へっていうのがなんかこう2つテーマで上がってきたような感じがします。I'm curious, actually, Yuka and Miko, you have seen both conversations so far, the Japanese conversation and conversation here in English. Any thoughts from you at this point? なんか、もしね、なんか今までの流れの感じで、なんかやっぱり日本語の会話と英語の会話、ちょっと違うなっていうのがあったら、それもシェアしていただければ面白いかもです。
いや、そもそも縦軸と横軸ぐらい捉え方が違うっていうか、日本人は、ゼウシは神様はノアに最後に何を伝えましたかっていうことに対してまっすぐにこうだと思います。質問と答えで終わり。でもアメリカ人っていうか、こっちの方々はもうすごい自分のストーリーっていうか、大きいビジョンをシェアリングしてるっていうのが、全然違うなって、そこが面白かった。
I asked Yuka and Miko, since they have now seen, both conversations, right? The conversation Japanese and conversation English. So I asked, whether they noticed any differences or any interesting convergences or, differences. And they said, Miko said that it's quite interesting that, so Japanese conversation was more sort of in a way, question and answer. So Zeushi asked the question. So what do you think that I said to Noah to do at the end of the flood and then the ark building process? And this is what they were trying to figure out the answer to it. But so far, I think, Katarina, Joshua, Gordon, you sort of, you talked about, you more thought about the story, like a macro vision of what that represents, where we are and where we are going, and so that the framing of the question is quite different, and that's actually very interesting.
なんか私が思うにやっぱりゼウシからのお題なので、源がみんなとつながってる状態でメッセージを下ろすときって同じ状況でも多分その人の意識の段階によって伝えるメッセージ変わると思ってるんですよ。で、だから今回も、日本の時と答えは変わるだろうと思ってて、だから今日その3人が出した答えがそもそももう全く日本とレベルが違うとこから来てるので、ゼウシは今いる3人はきっともうクリエーションをする段階に入ってるから、宇宙との共同創造を始めてるから、自分のこう内側から出てくる答えっていうのがはっきりしてて、そこからそれと、日本の場合は共同創造を始める前段階としてまずやっぱりメッセージをもらうというか受け取るっていうところが段階だったのかなって今思ったんです。だから今日ね、なんかゼウシから3人がこうもらうものって答えてきっともうちょっとこうクリエーションしていく部分で何がクリエーションするためのこう最後にもらった言葉みたいなものになるのかなって。
Yeah, it's interesting. Zeushi, he really tailors, right, his message or response depending on who he's talking to. So since all of you, 3 of you are already engaged in the creation process, so you're already you're in action as opposed to receiving and pondering about it. So probably the message that comes through Youka from Zeushi to you three would be more about message specifically for those of you who are already engaged in the creation process and therefore in the more advanced stage of the new world community building. But I think I see Palm on the screen. Is that you?
Yes, hello, I made it. Thank you. Sorry for being late. Hello.
Thank you for coming, brother.
Glad to be here with you all. Good to see you all.
Palm, do you want to also say maybe, I'm sorry, I'm putting you on the spot, the moment you arrive, but maybe a few words about yourself first, and then I'll also ask, your thoughts on the question from Zeushi today. But let's start with maybe, a few words about who you are.
Yes, hello, I'm Michael Preston, aka Palm Pato is my native name. I'm from the Winnemem Wintu tribe from Mount Shasta, California. And I'm grateful to be here right now. I'm just representing my indigenous side of my lineage right now, and I'm just happy to be here right at this moment in time. I'm currently in Weed, California, right next to Mount Shasta, and yeah, there's a lot going on out here, and I'm just happy to be in communication with you all.
No, great, thank you, and I'm glad you made it. So we just sort of, went around the first round of comments on the question from Zeushi. I don't know whether you had a chance to see it, but basically the message was, well, we are now entering the great moment of change. Everything that we have known in the past patterns that we actually wanted to change is about to collapse, and we're heading into, the new. So heading into the new world and therefore he was making analogy to the Noah's Ark, that those who heading into the new world would have different responsibility obligation. But so when Zeushi instructed Noah to build the ark, he also apparently told him to do something at the end of the process. And the question was, what do you think it was? So again, Palm, sorry for putting you on the spot, but if you have any thoughts, questions, comments on what that could have been.
At the end of the Noah's Ark, what was supposed to be constructed?
Right, but construction, or it could be even when the ark and survived, at the end of the flood.
I'm not exactly sure, but it always reminds me of our roundhouse traditions that are here in Northern California. And for us, it's kind of like building a Noah's Ark, build it and they will come kind of concept. And in preparation for the floods, it's kind of like along the same timelines of the Noah's Ark story, but it's we're supposed to build these ceremonial houses. That's sort of fascinating because we're supposed to build these houses. Originally, they were instructed to build them in preparation for a great flood or a great fire, and we're supposed to build these in their ceremonial houses. They're sort of ceremonial prayer houses, and we're supposed to build them to kind of offset the waters and the fires in order to make it into the next world, and also at the same time call it in the next world that we're calling in. This is the framework, I guess, they left us in order to call it in. And we're in the process right now of building this house and calling those spirits in, and it's kind of like our own Noah's Ark version of it. So I'm not exactly sure about what we're supposed to continue on with, but that's what they left for us in order to call in that world. So we're in the unification with what you're all talking about because of what they left for us here, and Mount Shasta being the beacon point,
right,
for that new world. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. No, you're actually spot on. Because so the Japanese participant, they had this conversation with Zeushi last week, and this is sort of the English version of it. But apparently, so last week, what Zeushi told the Japanese participants was exactly that you can only save those people who want to be saved. You cannot, and therefore, so there will be losses, and that those who survive because they were willing to listen, they're willing to be safe, they're willing to act on the message that they perceive, they then have responsibility to build a new world for, for everyone else. And also have an obligation to mourn the loss and pray for the perished. So that you're spot on that's exactly what Zeushi said last week, apparently. But I am very curious about what Zeushi would say to us. そろそろちょっとじゃあゼウシに出てきてもらってみましょうか。So yeah, maybe again we'll listen, we'll hear from Zeushi at this point, and then after that, we can maybe have another round of conversations, discussions. But I'm very curious. じゃあゆかさんお願いしてもいいでしょうか。
はい、わかりました。
Okay.
じゃあよろしくお願いします。お呼びいただきありがとうございます。皆さんとお会いし、お話をすることをいつも楽しみにしております。どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。
よろしくお願いします。今日は通訳が入りますので、少しゆっくりお話ししていただけるとありがたいです。
わかりました。
はい。では、今日のお題について少し議論をしてみました。ハワイに関わってくださったメンバーからは、箱舟は家族だとか、箱舟はなんかオアシスのようなものではないかというコメントが出ました。また、洪水は、意識の変革の現れではないかということでした。
とても面白い答えです。では、あなた方に質問です。意識の変革に伴い、そして世界の変化に伴い、あなた方が必要だと思うものが安らぎの場だということになりますが、それはどうしてなのでしょうか。
So I will actually respond to you with another question. You sort of thought of the ark as the sort of, you associate the ark and the story with family and oasis. So in a way, you seem to sort of, think of place of sanctuary, right? Safe place. Why did you think of that? What drove you to sort of make that connection?
You're speaking of me, right?
And I think Joshua, you also mentioned family. So maybe again, why did you associate with the sanctuary?
Well, since 2009, I've been on this mission to help create rent-free housing for foster children and seniors. And so, when I think of, and maybe it's also me as a mother, right? Like wanting everyone to be cared for.
カタリーナさんは2019年からシェルターみたいなもの、子供とかお年寄り向けのシェルターみたいなものを運営してきたので、なんかやっぱりそういう逃げ場所というかね、考えたそうです。Joshua, do you want to say a word, maybe?
Can you hear us?
Yep.
Okay, we were breaking out there for a bit. Yeah, I guess just our experience, experience as a family, and especially with this latest activation, since the 1010 ceremony and the Asuka Kotan and the Harmony Stones, and just how empowered we've felt since then, connecting with other people and finding that strength. Just experience, I guess, is where we're at. I feel like we're on the leading edge of this creation.
やっぱりハワイとかアスカトコタンとかのプロジェクトをやってきて、やっぱり共同創造、共同作業ということで、やっぱりみんながつながる家族ということを考えました。いかがでしょう、ゼウシ。
あなた方が今大切だと思われ作られているその器の中に一番必要なものは何でしょうか。まずあなた方が新しい世界へ移られたとき、対面する問題があります。しかしその問題こそが新しい世界、そしてあなた方の社会を作り上げていくための大きな発展へのヒントにもなります。
What you think as the most important as you create what you think as most important at the moment, and what is necessary for that, for the most important thing that you've identified, that is also a clue as you proceed to create the new world.
That was actually I was trying to come up with a question, because that is kind of my question. Like in the projects that we're manifesting right now for housing and caring for people in communities, what do you advise we focus on in this moment? And what do you advise us to avoid in order to be more efficient in this timeline?
今目の前で苦しんでいる人を助ける。今ここでできることをやっている。その中で何をどうしたらいいで、何が大事でしょう、どうしたらいいでしょう、アドバイスあったらお願いします。
あなた方がこれから対面する大きな問題の中には食料問題があります。まずあなた方のシェルターに、家族に人が訪れるのであれば、食べ物を分けれる場所である必要があります。そして水が必要です。これはあなた方の新しい世界へ向けて植物の種が重要だということであるということも覚えておいてください。
As you confront today's challenges, you need to be aware that there's a food crisis coming. So as you establish a places of gathering, the places that people come for help, you need to have food ready. You also need to think about water as essential resources. And related, but the third element is the seeds for planting. And that would be, again, essential for the new world creation.
あなた方が今ご自身の場で命をつなぐ土地のもと、ご自分たちのシェルターを作られると良いでしょう。これはコミュニティとも 村とも表現することができます。今、あなた方がそれぞれの場で作り上げること、そしてこの場所で自分は場を作っているということをどうか広く発信してください。
So, whenever you are, the land you are in, please do try to create a shelter through which you provide life-saving support. You could think of a shelter as a community or village, but as a place on the land where you are to support, to help people, and to make sure that you convey that, let people know that there is a place where people can receive support, a shelter.
そうすることで、あなた方が今使われているネットワークを使うことができなくなった際、どの土地にどの方が集まり場を作っているのかさえ知っていれば、移動することは可能でしょう。そうして必要な場に必要な人間たちが集まり、新しい世界を作り上げていく流れが始まっていきます。箱舟に来たものだけを救いなさいという理由もこういった意味です。
So that when the network infrastructure that we know today crumbles and collapses, you would know you have a network of places you can go to support each other. That placemaking will lead to a situation where that connects necessary places with necessary people. And that's what I also mean by when we talk about the ark, that you can only save the people who are willing to be saved, the people who gather to at these places that you would create. Any questions for Zeushi? I'm taking it in.
So he also mentioned when there was no online or network, if you know the local place where they are having the communities, you know that's the place to go. So that's why it's important for us to also broadcast or say it. This is what we are doing here in this place. With other, you show what you are doing as communities, and that's something I heard that also Zeushi said.
You guys have any question? Golden Palm? Palm, you want to say something? You're on mute though. You need to be unmute.
Yes. I feel like that is just so true what you were saying about the community. And it's interesting because it's what I feel like I'm really being called for here in Hawaii, to bring together people in this journey and creating this space seems to be such a oops, sorry about my phone. Such an essential ingredient. So it feels like a blessing to hear this right now, like a blessing on that manifestation for all of us and for the whole planet.
ハワイでね、やっぱり、活動していることもあって、おっしゃることは本当に、心に染みますということでした。ゼウシ、質問です。私からで。今ね、なんか、貧困とか紛争とかで、やっぱり、なかなかそういうシェルターを作れないところで、食料とかお水とかをサポートできるような、そういう難しいところでシェルターを作る。何かアドバイスがあればお願いできればと思います。The question from me was, how can we build a shelter in a place like, suffering from poverty or conflict or violence, the places that are not, that are unstable? Any advice? お願いします。
皆さんがこのネットワークを自由に使える間に多くの方で集まる必要があります。つながる必要があります。そうしてこの世界を大きく変えるための集合意識を集める祭りをされていかれると良いでしょう。これは必ず集まる方々の中に祈りが必要です。あなた方の意識の変革をどれだけ世界へと波紋のように広げることができるのか。今あなた方がより多くの人間とつながり、そしてこの地球上で一つのことに対して皆さんで意識を合わせ合うということが大切です。そのネットワークから生まれた人々のつながりであなたがおっしゃられるシェルターを作ることが難しい場所にも作ることが可能になっていくでしょう。一人一人の人間が動き出すとき、すべては可能になります。
ありがとうございます。So, while the network infrastructure is still intact, which will collapse eventually or could collapse eventually, if while the network infrastructure is still intact, you need to again reach out to as many people as possible. You need to create a bigger network. Because what you need is again the change in collective consciousness. And for that, the change in collective consciousness, you need the matsuri, the festival, that involves a prayer that would create sort of the wavelength globally through the world. Because that is again occasion through which we bring a consciousness together and focus on one common theme. We bring a consciousness together on a common theme. And if you have that, then you will be able to create a shelter and the connections of people around it, even in the most difficult places. It starts with action of one person, which will lead to many, many possibilities.
私から質問です。そのこれから来る食糧難というのは、この地球が用意しているポールシフトも関係があって、 来るものなのかなと思いますし、今のこの世の中がどんどん分断されている現状を感じながら、あ、そこが迫っているんだなっていう感覚もあるんですが、その期間はだいたいどのぐらい続くの、具体的にどのぐらい続くのでしょうか。
I have a question about the food crisis. As we head into the world is heading into division fragmentation, it seems quite real that the crisis is upon us. How long would that food crisis last, and how soon that come? お願いします。
期間ではありません。あなた方が一から大地を作り上げていくということにもつながりますので、これはこれから続いていくことだと思ってください。だからこそ、食糧難というきっかけが発展への大きなサインでもあるということになるのです。
It's not so much about the duration, but it's more about we beginning to reclaim the earth. We begin to recultivate the earth from the beginning. We kind of redo the agriculture. So think of the food crisis as a trigger for the new kind of development.
じゃあそういうことを地球の人が聞くと結構恐怖とか守りに入ったりする人がたくさん増えるのではないかなという感覚ですが、そこは新しい地球がもう一度始まるというところで、光にフォーカスして自分たちのやるべきことをこの地球でみんなでやっていくというそういったことでしょうか。
So if you think of the food crisis, some people may experience fear or think of it again associated with a crisis and difficulty, but what you're saying really is that it's a new beginning, basically. はい、お願いします。
あなた方に
How
とって
much
は
time?
不安を感じるのかもしれませんが、これは自然に戻るということですので、何も恐ろしいことではありません。今、現代の社会の中で皆さんが異常な状態に置かれていた。それが自然な状態へと戻っていく。ただそれだけだと思ってください。
Yeah, and I can understand that some people may fear or dread of the uncertainty, but what really is that we just go back to nature. What we have had in the past is abnormal. We just need to go back to the way of nature, the natural pattern, and therefore there's nothing to fear. We just go back to where we came from.
ありがとうございます。So Palm, do you have any question?
Yeah. I was just curious if there was an estimation about a timeline for when all this is supposed to kick off. How much time do we have to prepare for everything? Kind of thing.
質問でこの大いなる変化の時はいつ来るのでしょうか。どれだけ準備期間は残されているのでしょうか。お願いします。
あと2年だと思ってください。あなた方がご自分たちのシェルターを作る期間は。
Think of 2 years. 2 years for you to build a new shelter. Your shelter of where you are.
Is this shelter designed to protect us from the elements as well? Is there any elements that are supposed to happen at the same time that we should be aware of?
このシェルターは私たちを災害から守ってくれるものと考えてもいいでしょうか。
もちろんです。あなた方が土地と強くつながり、祈りとともにあなた方の暮らしを形作っていくのであれば、必ず 土地があなた方を守ります。
うん
何よりも地球とつながるということがあなた方にとって大切になっていきますが、それももともとはあなた方はそのようにして生きていたのです。
うん
その地球とのつながり、土地とのつながりを取り戻していくプロセスを楽しんでください。
Absolutely. If the shelter or your shelter is connected to the land you are, and if it involves a prayer to the land and to the community, and if that is for the new life to come, and certainly the land will protect you, the land that you're praying for or on. You're trying to reconnect to the earth. And that's how the people used to live back in the days. You are reclaiming the way of life, the community, the earth, and the land. Do enjoy the process.
I have one more question. Okay. Is this an inevitable, or is there a way to change it, the timeline?
この2年という期間はもう決まっているのでしょうか？それとも私たちの行動によって変わることはあるのでしょうか？
これはあなた方の行動によって大きく変わるものではありません。長い期間を踏み、今この時を迎えております。皆さんはそれをご存知のはずです。ですので、期間が迫っているように感じるかもしれませんが、このメッセージはずっと昔よりあなた方に対し伝えられてきたメッセージであるということをご理解ください。
So no, this is not something that will change depending on how we act now, because we've been on this path for quite some time. You know what we are facing is built on the past patterns over quite some time. So now we are hearing this message. Now it may feel like very short time, very short time frame, but in the process leading up to here, we have received this message before. We have had this message before, but it is what it is. We are here. We are here now, and that's it. There's one question through the comment. Through the comment section. すいません、ゼウシ、一つ質問が来てます。コロナについて、これは一体いつ終わるのでしょうか？それともこれからも続いていくのでしょうか？
これにつきましては、始まった頃にお伝えいたしました。あなた方が終わらそうとすれば、すぐに終わる問題だということを。宇宙がこの問題を投げかけているのではなく、これはあなた方人間同士で出し合っている問題提起であるということを終わらせることはあなた方の手にかかっているということをお忘れなきよう願います。
So we had this conversation early on the beginning of the COVID crisis. This is not thrown from the universe upon us, right? This is actually man-made. We, the people, or the friction among people, is creating the reality of COVID at the moment. そろそろ時間が迫ってきた感じでしょうか？ 30分。Is there any burning last question so that it's not too taxing on Zeushi or Youka?
Yes, I have one last question.
Yeah,
okay. I feel like.
Go
sorry.
ahead, Catalina, please.
So I feel like many of us are there. A lot of us are on the land or have purchased the land or we're getting ready to do this. And we're in the paradigm of, needing to raise funds for this. And we hear that we need to get our story out, right? What is the best way that we can do this in such a large wave that we can get this finished in 2 years?
Okay. Joshua, did you also have a question? Maybe I'll just ask one go.
Okay, if it's not too much trouble. Yeah, along with that, please answer that. And this kind of goes along with Palm's question. It sounded like my understanding from one of his questions was that the shelter seems to be, as far as it being protective, more of a prayer and more of a deepening of our relationship to the mother. Did I understand that correctly? And is that involved in us in our raising vibration, creating a protective?
Okay. 剛さん、最後に2つ質問をお願いします。まず1つ目は、コミュニケーション、いろんな人に伝えるっていうのはどうやってやったらいいでしょうか？どうやったらどれだけ多くの人に伝えることができるでしょうか？2つ目は、シェルターについて。そのシェルターはやっぱりその、祈りとかを込めて、自分たちとその母なる大地、地球との関係を深めるというふうな意味で、守ってくれると考えればよいでしょうか。
まず、第一の質問に関しましては、今日のこのような場のようなことをされると良いでしょう。皆さんが話し合うことが大切です。そして意見を出し合い、それぞれの思いを共有し合い、現状を把握するということ。その姿を多くの方が見ることで、見ている方々も一緒に考え始めるでしょう。自分ならどう考えるのかと。そして参加していく流れに入っていきます。どうか皆さんで今日のような場をたくさん開いていってください。
So the answer to the first question about how to communicate, perhaps again, a forum like today would be great because then it's a joint process, right? I mean that we bring our own opinions and thought processes, and we sort of try to recognize the reality together, and then think about what I can do. So conversation like this online is probably a great tool for spreading the consciousness. はい、ありがとうございます。2つ目お願いします。
この質問に関しましては、おおむねそういった捉え方で問題ありません。しかし一つ皆さんが理解していく必要がある部分は、あなた方は地球の子供であるということです。この大いなるマザーアースの下で生きている子供たちであるということ。子供は親の言いつけをよく聞かなくてはいけません。なぜなら親は子供のために指示するからです。地球上で起こるあらゆる自然環境の変化、災害についても、これは母親からのサインだと受け取ってください。そしてそういった自然現象が起きた時にも、あなた方がこの自然の恵みに対して祈ることができるのか、それもとても大切なことです。
So yes, the second question, yes, I think that overall that your understanding is what I'm trying to tell you. But if I can add one thing, please do not forget that you are the children of the earth, right? That you are the children of the Mother Earth. And children need to listen to their mom because moms are trying to look after the kids, right? By telling you what to do. So when you see the phenomena, right, natural disasters or otherwise, or when you see the elements, as Plum said, that those are the signs from the Mother Earth. So when the Mother Earth sends you those signs, even if it means natural disasters or the elements, would you be able to pray for them and receive them as such and pray for them? Zeushi
you.
Letさん、ありがとうございました。
Thank you.
皆さんとお会いし、たくさんお話しできまして、とても楽しい時間でした。多くの方々がこのように今起こる出来事を受け止め、そして我々宇宙を共に手をつなぎながら、こうして一つのことに対し答えを導き出していくということ、その時間を皆さんが取ってくださり、大変感謝しております。この素晴らしい変革の時に、また皆さんと多くの対話ができることを望んでおります。またどうぞお呼びください。ありがとうございました。
Thank you so much for being spend time with me. It was very great conversation, and now that we are heading into the moment of great change, I look forward to continued conversation, which is necessary and also beneficial for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's unmute.
Everybody.
Let's chat. That's all we need.
いやー、
お疲れ様です。ゆうかさん。
Thank
ち
you.
ょっと日本と今回がネタバレがちょっとびっくりした。つながってたね。
ねえ、本当だね。確かに。
具体的な。
すごい具体的だったね。
ねえ、
うん
この間のがより具体的になったっていう感じやった。
So it seems that though we did have the common theme, right, between the conversation with Zeushi in Japan and conversation today, but today I think we got really into more concrete stuff, from food crisis to water to shelter building.
That's the timeline too.
Hmm?
Timeline too.
Timeline, yeah.
That was important.
Very specific.
Yeah.
Wow.
What really?
Yeah, what should we do?
Yeah.
What should we prepare for?
Mhm.
But it really makes sense. He mentioned us like we should chat
Mm.
and then we should discuss. Then people start feeling, start thinking, right?
Mm.
Then they will do whatever they can do.
Mm,
So
mm.
that is really makes sense.
Wait, so
Yeah.
2 years also, 2 years that you have to build the towers, right? The 8 more by 2024.
Yes.
Yeah, so that Zeushi wanted to build 8 more towers by 2024. So that's also 2 years.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
塔を建てるのもあと2年ですよね。
Mm.
そうですね。
忙しいです。
忙しい。それで、とにかく急がないといけない。
That's busy. Maybe Katarina and Gordon and Joshua and Palm, are there actually things that you want to try in the next 2 years that you've been thinking of, maybe a new initiative, relocations, new developments that you've been thinking about, and now you're like, actually, come to think of it, maybe this is a time to do XYZ.
For me, well, Well, I'm thinking about you're affirming everything that we've been getting messages from as far as building we call it a roundhouse, but it's that structure that you were talking about here. We're supposed to build it like 8 years ago in preparation for what's coming into the now. And so we have a 2-year timeline. I'm like, okay, we're getting ready to build it this year. And then Joshua, thank you for what you're commenting on too, as well as like getting it into the spiritual part of it and the spiritual protection mode as well. That's kind of like where I was getting at too. I was trying to ask the question. It's kind of hard to get everything across all the time, but yeah, I'm thinking about that. I'm like, okay, like how do we afford to do all this stuff as well? Like Catalina was saying, and I'm like, do we go towards the cryptocurrency mode and then try to get some money real quick to try to get this stuff together? It's kind of like where I'm at, and I'm like, do we have enough time to do all this? And I'm like, I think we do, but those are just some of my things that I'm thinking about that come to mind when you're talking about like the question that you mentioned. Yeah, and do we make those plunges into that alternative currency mode or not?
Wow, that's a whole new dimension that we actually haven't even talked about, but be actually interesting, right? I mean, it'd be interesting. That's sort of the speculative scenario thinking.
I also I'm feeling now kind of like you, Palm, with so many opportunities coming, and yet the dream of building this has been for many years, and yet maybe hadn't gotten as solid. So now is the time for real, seeing these efforts come to life and inform in community. And here in Hawaii, all of a sudden, like land is coming up. It's like, oh, and now that's where we need to build. And I'm working on this in a sacred learning, like an online portal for sacred learning, so people can learn about indigenous wisdom and things like what's happening right here in this forum. And it's just super exciting to think that now actually is this time where we can maybe the portals are opening for being able to really manifest into physical form some of these dreams and visions that have been culminating for some years now. And culminating in this 2-year moment where we have to really start to solidify that manifestation.
Now I remember. 一番最初にさ、やろうとした英語のミーティングで、本当はネイティブインディアンの代表でポムが入って、ネイティブハワイアンの代表で私のクムエフラニが入るっていうはずだったんだけど、なぜかアクシデントが起こって、その人たちがじゃなくなったっていうところから始まったんだけど、でもその人たちに何を聞きたかったかっていうと、そのネイティブインディアンとかハワイアンの祈りの力とか、祈りはどうするんですかっていうことを最初に話してたっていうのが英語のミーティングの最初だったんだよね。なんかこの順番で2月18日とか
18日ね。
とコムとかその祈りをずっとやってこられた方たちが2月18日に来るんだけど、この順番なんだってすごい腑に落ちました。
So it's very interesting. When we did the very first meeting, when we actually called Katarina like 2 minutes before we started, right? Meeting, we actually want to talk about the prayer part, the spiritual part that Joshua and Palm just touched upon, but it just didn't work out, right? So in the first English session and in today's session, we kind of talked about more concrete things. And then I think the next session, we're going to deep dive into the prayer, the spiritual element. So the flow is actually quite interesting. Instead of starting from the other way around, this is where we're getting into. Youka さん、今ね、なんか思い当たることはあるって聞いたの。なんかやってみたかったことで、今2年って言われたから、次はこれかなってなんか思いつくことありますかって聞いたら、
2年
そうそう、2年間、次の2年間で、ポムは、なんか、やっぱりそのシェルターっていうか、そのね、なんか、プロテクションできるところは、気になったので、だから、ジョシュアにその質問してもらって嬉しかった。でも、ただ、2年後ね、これからどんな風に世界が変わっていくのか、なんか仮想通貨とかそういうことも考えなきゃいけないのかなとかって、そっちに走っていったのが、ポムで、ゴールデンはやっぱり、確かにそのシェルターっていうことをやってきて、で今なんかいろんなチャンスもあって、なんかタイミング的には合ってるのかな。あとなんかオンラインでも、なんかスピリチュアルのなんかこう、 原稿の研究のことをやりたいと思ってたっていう、ね。
なんか今仮想通貨の話が出たからあれなんだけど、なんかね、去年かな、確かゼウシが今お金を例えば持ってる方とかが社会のためのお金を使っていくんであればどれくらいですかみたいな、お金の価値が変わるって言ってたからっていうのを聞いたときに、あと3年ぐらい今のお金の価値が適用されるのは3年ぐらいだから、まあ、ある人は使い切ってみたいな感じのことを言ってたんですよ。だからなんかまあ本当想像はつかないんだけど、やっぱり食料問題が出た時にお金っていうのは何の意味も持たなくなっちゃうから、物々交換とかきっとそれぞれのシェルターごとに自分の得意なものとかあるものないものってあると思うから、そういうなんかつながりも今の2年のうちに作っておくと、あそこにはあそこがあったねとか言って行って交換し合うみたいなこととか、なんかそういうガラッて変わるっていうよりもやっぱ状況に押されてそういう風になっていくっていう感じかなっていうのがありますね。ただなんかお金のどうせ3年ぐらいから今のうちに使っといた方がいいよみたいなのを去年言ってたっていう。
そっか。っていうところでポムが消えてしまったけど。I actually did ask about the cryptocurrency, right? The future of the currency, the monetary system. And so the Zeushi actually apparently has said before that the currency, the financial system also changed. So much so that if you have extra funds and if you want to donate, donate now, because the currency that you have now may not mean the same thing 3 years from now. So therefore, and then based on that, the Youka was commenting that, and therefore, right, the shelters that she talked about today, maybe you would create a network of shelters in a way that this shelter has, let's say, the wheat. This shelter has, the sea products. This shelter has. So you may not go back this ancient practice of we cherish the products from the land, and we exchange the products without relying on the currency or the monetary system. And maybe that's another sort of way of thinking about the networks of the shelters, that we sort of bring the specific from the land, right? And then they be able to survive when the food crisis comes and when the network infrastructure collapses, when the money doesn't mean anything anymore.
Well, I thought it was really interesting too is that even between the 4 of us or 5 of us who are the guests, Golden, I'm really looking forward to finding out what you're doing up in Hawaii, and Joshua and Youka are over in Lapahoihoi, and I'm down here in Pahoa, right? So this is like the tiny little micro, and then we've got Palm over there, which we already know there's been navigation and trading between the Native Americans in the Pacific Northwest, as well as over here in Hawaii. So I think part of that network building is through these calls, right? Because Golden, I wouldn't know you otherwise, and I wouldn't get to find out what are you doing up in Hawaii. And in fact, my husband and I are actually kind of focusing on like what is the crop that we are wanting to propagate for this. And my husband's started to do test things for grains and things we're doing down here.
And I think that's also the heart of the Askakotan project, right? That you create new shelter, community, commune, village, nation, based on that same concept. なんかAskakotanともつながりますね。
The feeling of Earth family feels like the activation of the Harmony Stone, although we all kind of knew it before, it's just feels even more alive right now. And super excited because I have those connections down in New Zealand with some of our Maori brothers and sisters down there, and just really excited about the movement around the earth and the synergy of like you're saying, Catalina, like how we're on the same island and we haven't connected yet. So it's like, how much more is there for us to really bridges that we can build and I think it will create those funds for the future. We're working on a new nonprofit right now to be able to have a place for sacred learning centers, so which kind of feels like when you were saying the shelters, it's like, oh, it's like that center, which you were thinking like a place where people can come and feel safe and learn and grow and trade and share their abundance. I think COVID's also inspired so many people to move into growing their own food more, right? It's become more paramount that this is actually, it's not just a hobby, it's our future.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the conversations are moving toward that direction, whether it's a circular economy or, the climate change or COVID, that we actually need to look after ourselves and look after the earth. I think that's the trend is going. Well, it's been about an hour and a half, so by now, maybe it's a wrap time. ゆうかさん、今ね、なんか、この場を通して、すでにだってね、この4人、もう、ネットワークっていうか、ね、それぞれの場所で活動してるのがつながってるし、もうそういう動きができてるんではないかなって。で、今、ゴールデンさんがね、コロナでね、食料を自分たちのご飯ぐらい自分たちで作ろうかっていう動きも出てきたのもあって、ある意味ではやっぱりね、そっちの方に流れが出来上がってるんじゃないかなっていうことを言ってました。時間なのでちょっと締めようかなと思うんですが、何か最後に一言ありますか？ Maybe the last word, Youka.
ね。私ですか？はいはい。なんか、私は今一番嬉しいのはこういうふうにみんなでゼウシとディスカッションする時間が取れたっていうのが嬉しいです、今日は。なんか、ゼウシは予言はしない存在で、私は予見してるだけ。このちょっと先こういう風になっていくから準備しなさいよって。具体的にどうとかそういうことを予言したりはしないし、で、私自身も自分はメッセンジャーじゃなくてクリエイターだと思ってやってるから、メッセージを伝えるっていうことじゃなく、この来たものに対してみんなでどうしたらいいっていうことをやりたくってずっとやってきた中にゼウシも入ってくれて、で今日こうやってみんながゼウシと喋って、で一個のなんか新しい情報が聞けたっていうのがすごい嬉しかったんです。またね、そういうのできたらいいなと思います。
So no, this was great that we could, discuss and think together. So Zeushi doesn't, it's not his intent to foretell. And Yuka herself, she doesn't really think of a messenger, but she thinks of herself as a creator. And I think today we sort of, did create something together. I mean, and Zeushi was part of the conversation, but it wasn't dictated as such. So looking forward to further opportunities to do exactly this. And then this was fun. I mean, for me, it was a lot of fun. And that, I think, was the great moment to have together. So thank you so much for the past hour and a half. We continued.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. So next is, I think, February 18th in English.
Yes. February 18th. Yeah. Please join.
And then February
And do we-
11th is France.
Is the
France.
February 11th still happening for the? I know you had talked about that date for the France.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
is that going to be live streamed? Just wondering how we can participate in that.
フランスのやつをライブでつながったりしますか？どうやって参加したらいいですか？
そうしようと思ってて、今ちょっとまたそれをゼウシに今度聞いて最後に配信しようと思ってます。
That's the plan. She will consult with Zeushi and let us know. All right, to be continued then.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. Aloha, everyone.
Aloha.
Love everybody. See you
Aloha,
all.
everyone.
Love you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.